Hello, thanks for joining us today. We are talking about all the ways to market your new titles in Edelweiss. And because that's our topic and the fact that you're listening right now, I'm going to take a wild guess that many of you are in some way in charge of marketing your books, maybe at a publisher or an agency of some kind, or maybe marketing is just one of the many hats that you wear. That's probably pretty likely. But either way, my goal today is to share some ideas that can make you more effective at doing just that. Hopefully, we will give you some new ideas and help you save some time and some energy too. I am Sarah Richmond. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Above the Tree Line, the company behind Edelweiss. This morning I realized I didn't have a biopic to share with you, so you can see that my selfie game is not so strong. Also that my youngest son is totally not a morning person. But despite the fear in his face, there's really no need to be scared right now. This is going to be fun. We're going to talk about all the ways to get the word out about your awesome new titles. I am going to cover a lot of content here today, and I might not get to all of your questions. So I have my email up there as well as our awesome support team. Feel free to reach out now or anytime in the future if you have some questions. And also be aware, if you've never gone to help.edelweiss.plus, there's tons of how-to docs on how to do all of this and way more out there. And that's nice, especially if you're working after hours or trying to get something done really quick. Usually you can get your questions answered there too. All right, so promoting new titles. Now, because all the major publishers post their catalogs on Edelweiss and it hosts about 95% of the US front list, we're witness to a lot of different ways that publishers promote their titles. There's a broad spectrum of what people do. Everyone's approach is a little bit different. Often it depends on their particular audience or maybe the audience just for that specific book and what the book's about. It depends a lot on budget, let's be honest, but also on team experience and the comfort zone of the team members. You know, what's worked well for them in the past, what do they know how to do, what is their favorite tactics. So some of this, depending on what you do today, may not be completely new to you, but hopefully we'll have some nuggets in there that will spark some new ideas. So when it comes to using Edelweiss for marketing purposes, I tend to think about it in terms of three main buckets. The first of which is catalogs, and that is really the core of Edelweiss is the publisher catalog service. So when I'm talking about things related to catalogs, it's things like, you know, your title listings, showcases, creating custom collections, markups for accounts, event grids, inserts, things like that. And then I'm going to call out review copies a little bit separate, just because they're probably the core, the traditional marketing tactic for promoting new books. But also, let's just talk about how to use digital and print and really how to maximize their use just a little bit. And then there's kind of this catch-all bucket of marketing, kind of the more traditional marketing. I have like quotations, you can't see me, but quotations around marketing type activities, things like advertising. So like banners and newsletters and social media and in-house marketing that will complement the things that you're doing in Edelweiss. So we'll kind of walk through some of that. But before we jump into that, I just want to spend a minute talking about administrative privileges in Edelweiss, because many of the things that we're going to talk about shortly require some sort of admin access to your titles in Edelweiss, or at least knowing the right person in your own organization that can help you get it done. Oftentimes they can delegate it or do it for you. So you can check out what kind of access you have by clicking on your name in Edelweiss to open up your profile. And when you do that, you're going to see a list of your access settings under Edelweiss Privileges. And if you have some kind of admin access, you're also going to see that little link to the left that says Administration. I'm not going to click into that right now, but that takes you to an account administration page, which is good to know about. That's where all the publishers create and remove users for their organization. It's where they can see who else is assigned to each of these admin privileges. They can manage catalogs, event grids, featured reviews, and all sorts of fun things there. So what does Edelweiss privilege actually mean? What is possible here? So there's lots of different kinds of admins because publishing organizations are different and sometimes they're pretty complex, and we need to be able to meet all sorts of different levels of access. Publisher reps is probably the most common privilege. These are for folks, anyone really that needs rep-like features, so not just a sales rep, but people who need the ability to create markup catalogs, manage their own contacts, create personal collections of titles, export title information. So this definitely doesn't need to be a sales rep. It could be someone in marketing and publicity, for example. It's probably the most common privilege assigned within a publishing organization. And then you have catalog admin, and that's more of an elite group. It's those few individuals within the publishing organization who need to access Edelweiss online catalog administration tools. So they're the ones adding and deleting and managing catalogs and title content. And oftentimes publishers only give one, maybe three people this type of access. And typically these people are not your sales reps. They can do what they need with just sales rep access up above. And then user administration is pretty straightforward. These are folks that can manage new users, they can remove users, they can edit user privileges, and oftentimes, again, like catalog administrators, this is a small number of people in the organization. And then you have some specific users for people who are using Edelweiss for very specific purposes. So you have like a review admin. These are people who have access to all the reviews that Edelweiss readers submit for your company's titles, and they're able to feature them on the site on the reviews tab, for example. Or publicity admins. These are folks that can manage events and manage event grids within Edelweiss for your organization. And then there's insert admins, and we'll talk about inserts a little bit later, but this privilege allows these folks to schedule and upload inserts for titles, which are kind of like banner ads that appear above a title listing. And if you click on that, you might also see something related to DRC admin. That DRC stands for digital review copies. And if your publishing organization subscribes to DRCs, you might have some detail there about how you can manage titles or manage just requests for review copies and approve requests and things like that. So depending on your level of access, that will kind of lead what you can do within Edelweiss itself. So step one, check yourself. If you're having trouble doing something that we talk about today, it might be just because of your level of access. So for example, user, catalog, review, insert, and DRC admins, they all have access to this promote button that shows for each of your titles. And when you click on that button, you see a little screen that looks like this. And it presents you with some options for paid promotions. And so we'll jump into these in a minute, but it's worth knowing if you don't see that promote icon, it's probably because of your privileges, so you can kind of troubleshoot that way. All right, so digging into using Edelweiss for marketing purposes, starting with your catalog and title listings. There's actually a lot that can be done here, and most of it's at no additional cost, perhaps just a bit more effort and coordination. And I am making an assumption here that folks listening currently post their digital catalogs on Edelweiss. It may not be the case, but for those of you that do, you know just the benefit of having them out there, of having your titles posted where people are searching for new titles. That's helpful on its own, but don't stop there. In addition to that, you can do some things that really help your titles pop. Make it even easier for your sales reps, for example, to sell those titles. So as many of you know, Edelweiss kind of started replacing the former paper catalogs that publishers would send to book buyers. Some of those paper catalogs definitely still exist, but many have moved to digital. And if you go onto any publisher page on Edelweiss, you're going to see current catalogs listed. Often these might represent certain imprints or certain seasons, just like they would for paper versions. And so you have these big catalogs there. But because it's a digital format, there's a lot more you can do with your titles on Edelweiss. Every publisher using Edelweiss creates catalogs, but not everybody takes the extra step with collections. And that's where you can really get creative as a marketing person. Collections are basically like custom private catalogs. They don't show on your publisher's main page with all of your other catalogs, but you can share them with certain folks. So you can create collections for various titles that draw more attention to them, while also making buyers feel like you're really providing personalized service and making their job easier. And since their job is hopefully to buy your titles, this is definitely a good thing. And we hear that from booksellers a lot, that their favorite publishers and their favorite sales reps are the ones that are going a step further. They're customizing their catalogs by creating collections with them and really curating that larger catalog in a way that's meaningful for them. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean to customize a collection for each individual bookseller. I'm sure they would love that, but ain't no one got time for that. But you can segment your target audience and find a way to group your titles in a meaningful way for them, just like you probably do your other marketing efforts. And once you've made a collection, you can share it with certain organizations or contacts actually within Edelweiss. You can also email a link to someone. You can print it out. You can even share it on social media, like you see this example from Macmillan here. Well, this might be a good time to mention too. I will say if you create a collection and you share it on social, on Twitter, and you tag Vice Squad, I will retweet it to expand your reach. And so just to give a little boost there, we love seeing that. But it's a great way to get out there. So definitely customizing collections are a great way to do it. And you'll see, I mean, publishers do some really creative things with this. They might create, well, Macmillan here, a collection just for their librarian audience. It might be related to library reads, for example. They might have a collection around award seasons or a specific award or honor, or maybe just regional title collections or about a certain theme or holiday. So there's lots of different ways to kind of draw attention to your titles outside of the kind of the basic catalog, which is definitely needed, but there's more that you can do. So how to do it. So create a collection, you click on create collection on your catalogs page, or you can also from a title listing click the add to or remove from collection icon. So it's pretty simple. I mean, you can see here the possibilities are endless. There's really an opportunity to get creative and try it out and see what works best for your own audiences that you market to. I should also mention that you can find a lot more details on creating, editing, and sharing collections over on the help site. There's a lot there, and I'd love to hear examples of how it's worked for you too. If you send me a note, we love seeing those examples. So moving on from collections and catalogs, let's talk about what goes into those, and that's your titles. And the title listing is more than just a list of basic facts about a book. It's a summary, really, of all of your marketing efforts for that title. It's why people should buy it. So first, there are a few things you can do to enhance your title listing. So in general, a good rule of thumb is the more complete title data you include in your listing on Edelweiss, the better. This includes marketing data and related resources. The more you have, it increases the likelihood of people just finding your titles and also purchasing it. So definitely think about what can you add? Can you add in PDFs of illustrations? Can you add in marketing plans or more detailed author information? All this type of thing that will be helpful for buyers. One fun way, my favorite way to enhance a title listing is to include a video. You don't see this quite as much, so it kind of stands out. Something like a book trailer or an author interview, for example. Could even be a video of an author event. Another sometimes overlooked option is to kind of take advantage of all those title reviews in Edelweiss, especially for publishers that are doing review copies in Edelweiss and you have all of those reviews. You can make sure that a great review is always visible to users by featuring it. And if you remember back to those admin privileges, you can see that a review or a catalog administrator can feature that in the administration area on Edelweiss. So make your title listings as rich as possible. This not only gives buyers more information to inform their purchase decisions, but it also just helps them sell the title. And the more titles they sell, the more they buy from you. So it's a win-win for everyone. So another basic way to drive orders, and this is if you're on the catalog administration side and you kind of cross over to marketing, you're probably familiar with this, and that is comps and related products. But if you're not really kind of involved in catalog administration, this might be something a little bit newer for you. Depending on how your organization is structured, marketing folks may or may not be as involved in this, but there's a lot that marketing folks can offer here. So I want to mention it. Comps are comparable titles. So they're titles you expect this new title to perform like in a sales-wise kind of way. Another title for them might be, or another term for this is like model title. Book buyers, as you can imagine, they see thousands of books and they really don't have time to do a lot of research. It's not their favorite thing. They'd rather be out there talking to people about books. And so it's in your best interest to provide relevant sales data to them to help them make decisions and make them happier overall. But don't go too crazy here. The ideal number of comps is typically just 1 to 5. Just make it useful. From a book buyer's perspective, they tell us all the time they love to see comps that are, the same title or same author, things that were recently published, so not a comp from 20 years ago, things in the same format or books by other authors around the same topic, something that's similar that will provide some context for them. Now, related products, on the other hand, are other viable titles or related titles that your publisher offers that have some relationship to this title and are potential upsells or add-on sales. So it's kind of like the, if you like this, you might also like this kind of tactic. They could be displays or dump bins that include the current title, could be previous titles by that author or those in the same series, that's a big one, or that same title in another format, relevant titles in the same theme. Could also be free marketing materials that you have. So all of this information is useful to book professionals that are considering purchasing this title, right? So comps and related products are great marketing efforts to add to your title listings, and really the more the better. Really helps book buyers make faster and better decisions. And there's a kind of a spin-off of that, and that's showcases. So if you like to list related products in Edelweiss in a little bit more visual way, kind of makes them pop out a little bit more, you can create a showcase. This is pretty fun. It's a little bit newer in Edelweiss. And the legacy version of Edelweiss, they were called marketing collections. They don't look quite as pretty as this, but you might be familiar with them from that name. So play around with this and give it a try. See what works best for your own titles and what your buyers and your users really enjoy. So event grids are another way to draw attention to your title listings. Now this one doesn't apply to every title, but when it does, author tours can really spark interest in new titles and really, spur on some new orders. Lots of publishers add their event grids to Edelweiss, and this provides like an interactive way to collect event proposals and bids for their touring authors. So basically those publicity admins that you saw earlier in Edelweiss, they're able to provide a list of all your touring authors, including their tentative tour stops. Any other information you want to provide, you can throw in there, and then your accounts are able to click Make Request, and they can submit their proposal based on the information you've provided. And they'll include some really helpful information like how many people they expect to attend the event and how many sales, or if they had that author there before, how successful was that event. Things that will really help you gauge whether it will be a good event for both the bookstore, the library, and also for the author and the publisher. So all those things together, all the work you do in terms of catalogs and collections and title listings and events, as a marketer, all of that then makes it easier for the reps to sell your books, and that's ultimately what we're trying to accomplish here. And reps can build on all of your efforts by then adding their own perspective and personal knowledge of their accounts. They're the ones that really personalize it to make it even more likely that an order will be placed. And there are 4 elements to a markup if you're not super familiar with them. It's a way of kind of customizing a catalog and communicating directly to their accounts so they can prioritize things. Priority is a way of drawing attention to a particular title. They can tag titles. You see this a lot where they're tagging local author or special promotion or a rep favorite, just ways to kind of highlight and help draw attention to certain titles that they think will work at that store in particular. Notes also just allow reps to annotate the title listing. Oftentimes they have information they're privy to that's not included in the title listing, or maybe they want to call out like, hey, weren't they here when on their last author tour, didn't they stop by? You should think about this. So they can personalize a note in there. And then of course comps, we mentioned comps just a minute ago, but reps are also able to highlight comps that you've provided as a publisher. They can also add additional comps themselves that they think apply for this store. So markups are really building on all of the stuff you've done already in Edelweiss for marketing purposes, and then they're really just personalizing it in the sales process for their accounts. So they're enriching that. And I think the more effective marketing is, the more effective sales is, and vice versa. It's definitely a good team. And so all of those are ways to enhance your title listings, and they're all included in your normal catalog subscription. So I'm separating this one a little bit because catalog inserts, we're moving into a little bit of paid promotions here. But they're wonderful ways to draw attention to your titles that you want to push maybe a little bit more than others. I know we don't really like to play favorites, but we definitely have some titles that we want to draw more attention to than others. And so a catalog insert is a banner ad that goes above the title listing, and Edelweiss users see it in the catalog, they see it when they search for that title, they'll see it anywhere that the title shows up, and it really makes that title pop up, even if it pop out to them. If they're scrolling through a bunch of titles in Edelweiss and then all of a sudden they see a pretty banner above one, it definitely is effective at getting their attention. And so they're basically banner ads. They're also really affordable, so I love this tactic because you can purchase this for $200 by clicking that promote icon. We actually just released the functionality, so you can choose to either pay by credit card or be invoiced, so that flexibility is nice. But my favorite thing about inserts is that they last as long as the title is in Edelweiss. There's no expiration date here. And you can also update them at any time for no additional charge. So just think about that from a marketing perspective. You could have one that's specific to pre-publication that says coming soon and generate some excitement about that. You could switch it out for a post-publication banner ad. You could change it during award season, or if there's a new review you want to draw attention to, or there's a new TV or movie series based on this book, you can change that banner ad out as much as you want. And of course you can remove it if you want to, but it's there. You definitely can get your money's worth. So I just touched on a whole bunch of stuff about promoting titles in Edelweiss, and it's often at this point that a marketing-minded person will say something to me like, hey, Sarah, it's cool that I can do all of this in Edelweiss, but how do I really know how my titles are doing in the market? And what can Edelweiss do to help me with that? So I'm just putting in a little plug here for Edelweiss Analytics. I'm not going to dive into it now, but I do want to mention it. It is an add-on, additional fee module for publishers, but man, it pays for itself. It really aids in managing several aspects of your business. It's huge for marketing and sales in particular. It can be super helpful with managing those responsibilities. So what does it do? I mean, basically we get daily sales reporting from over 700 independent retailers every evening, and so it gives you that daily sales reporting over email, but it also really just provides a lot of detail at the title level, but also at the catalog level or the collection level. There's all sorts of ways to slice and dice your data there. It's probably actually even more exciting for sales reps. They love it because they can look at, as long as that store is a subscribing analytics customer, then they can really see how their titles are performing at that store and really personalize their recommendations for new orders or for returns, and really be a wonderful sales consultant for that store. So there's lots of potential applications for this. If you're interested, definitely let us know. And we have a whole nother video on Edelweiss Analytics, so check that out if that piques your interest. Whew, okay, so that was a lot of possibilities related to highlighting your titles just within Edelweiss, but there are many other ways to generate pre-publication buzz, and review copies is probably I mean, it's the industry's favorite, right? It's been around longer than anything. And that's because, I mean, quite simply, they're just really effective. I mean, it's hard to measure the true impact of review copies, but we did a little bit of research here and found that, you know, at a minimum, if you invest $1 in review copies, you're going to see that translate to $5 or more in sales. And that's likely a big underestimate. And you usually don't see that type of ROI in marketing. So don't tell anyone not in marketing I said that. But I mean, that's a pretty awesome ROI calculation. And review copies are just effective in multiple ways. I mean, they can clearly be shared with professional book buyers to increase direct sales, or get hand sellers, or to sell it and recommend it to customers, also to get librarians to include it in reader's advisory. But they're also just effective pre-publication and generating reviews and really creating some pre-publication buzz. So, you know, earlier this year we had a webinar with some panelists that manage review copies for Norton and HarperCollins, and they just, you know, talked about how they use review copies to generate pre-publication buzz. And I just pulled a couple things from that about how to get the most out of it. Their number one was, you know, first and foremost, know your target audience. You know, what are your goals with review copies? Just like any other marketing tactic, what are you really trying to get done? Are you looking to increase bookstore purchases or librarian purchases or recommendations or nominations, reviews? You know, this may differ for different roles within your publishing house. You know, oftentimes we see sales reps are more focused on booksellers, while marketing is more focused on media or librarians. But it's really the beauty of review copies is you can use them in a lot of different ways, and they definitely reach a broad audience. Another tip to get the most out of review copies is to consider the request. This may sound obvious, but it's oftentimes easy to forget, especially when we get busy. But when Edelweiss users request a DRC or a digital review copy, they have to know why they're requesting it and leave a note. You can also access their profile, which gives you some important information about how they promote books, maybe links to their site or their social media, shows their review submission history and things like that. It really helps you understand, you know, why might they be requesting this review or this review copy, and what could I then ask them to do? And this is oftentimes a skip step, but it's so important, and not just approving their request for the review copy, but making an ask of your own. So, you know, ask them what you'd like them to do after they read it. In many cases, you might just be asking them to leave a review. If it's a librarian, maybe you suggest, you know, please nominate this for library reads. Or if it's a bookstore, maybe consider for purchase or share with their team. So whatever that might be, it's nice to have that call to action there, and it's an often overlooked step. And print review copies are, you know, their value is very much the same. We find the audience that likes print review copies are oftentimes a little bit different than those that access digital review. And in the past, print review copies have always been kind of a side process to, you know, what the marketing and sales teams are doing in Edelweiss. And that kind of makes it a challenge. There's definitely challenges to managing print review copies, which is why we've started offering a way to use Edelweiss for this. I mean, the struggle is you often end up with way too many or not enough, and it's hard to also just get them to the right people. But print review copies or ARCs or, you know, whatever we might call them, they are perhaps, you know, the really classic marketing tactic. And in fact, we found that publishers spend on average about 22% or more, up to half of their marketing budget sometimes, just on print review copies. And they can be used in a lot of different ways, very similar to the digital versions, except of course there's a lot more cost involved with this because you're shipping something and incurring shipping and handling and printing costs there. And so that often puts a little bit more focus on who do these go to, how do we get them out to the right people, how do we really get the most value out of them. And the challenge here is that you know, publishers are usually managing their print review copies based on supply. And so this means, you know, reps or marketing people are requesting their print versions early in the season based on, I mean, a guess, just an informed guess, but it's an estimate of need. And then they distribute them based on that supply that they have. So reps bring review copies to sales calls, or they send them afterwards to an account that's interested in it. Maybe marketing brings them to, the regional events in the fall, or the, ALA events, to pass those out. But because they have that limited supply, usually they could miss opportunities to reach people who are interested in a timely way. There's also a high, waste and handling cost. And we did some research for publishers before we released, Edelweiss as an ordering platform for print review copies. We asked a bunch of publishers about what were their biggest challenges here. And I bet if you were involved in managing print review copies, this is probably no surprise to you. I mean, cost was definitely the biggest challenge. I mean, it's a big hit to a marketing budget, but reducing waste as a concern wasn't far behind. In fact, the vast majority of publisher respondents estimated that they ended up not using over 10% of their print review copies, and often even as high as more than 50%. So there's a lot of waste there. So improving the process to ensure that they get it to the right people, that they use what has been printed, being able to measure success and just manage the process from an operational perspective, all of these were just seen as really big challenges. So the solution in Edelweiss allows you to work in a demand model. And so means the reps and accounts can request print versions as needed to be delivered directly to an interested party. And so there's lots of different ways to do that, but Edelweiss can serve as sort of that front end request and management system so that everything's kind of managed in one place, and also expanding your reach and reducing costs that way. So pretty cool. Similar to digital review copies, one best practice here related to print review copies is to be very intentional about who you give one to and what you expect them to do with it. So they can be a powerful tactic, they can be well worth it, but it's best to use your money wisely, right? So when you send a print review copy out to someone, be sure to outline what your desired call to action is, whether that be a review, reader recommendation, review in Edelweiss, or a purchase, or share on social, whatever you'd like them to do. Okay, so we've talked about how to draw your attention to your titles in Edelweiss and how to reach influencers with print or digital review copies. There's one last bucket of ways to promote your titles, and that's through marketing such as advertisements, social media, and email campaigns. And this is, I said this earlier, it's probably what folks generally think about when they think about promoting new titles, but really it's just the icing on the cake. All that we've talked about so far really has to happen before you get to this. You have to have that strong foundation of robust title listings, of well thought out catalogs or collections, of review copies. All of that makes your marketing efforts here that much stronger and more effective. This is really kind of the last step in this whole process. Many marketing opportunities you probably manage in-house, and some you can partner with Edelweiss on. So newsletters, for example, are a great way to promote your title. It doesn't have to break the bank either. There are lots of options available to you. Depending on your goal or your target audience, some newsletters or publications may make more sense than others. For example, the picture here is of the weekly newsletter that highlights what's new in Edelweiss. It's really popular with our users. People wait for it on Tuesday afternoons, and if it's late, we get a lot of emails about it. It goes to over 70,000 book professionals in the US, Canada, and Australia, and also those that have chosen to self-subscribe. So if you've seen this before, you've likely seen your catalogs, maybe your review copies there, because a text-only listing is included just complimentary. It's going to include all new catalogs that were added to Edelweiss in the last week. It's going to include all new review copies as well. And so those are down there at the bottom. But you can get 11 times the number of clicks by featuring your title at the top, which costs $300. So you can also grab the top banner spot if you really want to make a big splash. And so there's lots of options there. And you may also have your own newsletters or email blasts that you kind of tend to turn to. We have some other newsletters at Edelweiss. We have monthly newsletters that go to certain user types, to librarians and booksellers and reviewers and publishers. And these role-specific newsletters are where we highlight relevant content. So product updates, events, training tips, things like that. You can subscribe to these yourself as well, even if you might not be a bookseller yourself, just to kind of see what goes in them. And of course, you can advertise in it as well if there's interest for that. So newsletters are a wonderful way just to kind of keep your really your advocates, your true fans, abreast of what's going on and new titles that are coming out and getting them excited about it. They're just a really helpful thing. And there are other ways ultimately we're trying to drive traffic back to your titles in Edelweiss and all the work that you did there, just generating buzz for your titles. So in addition to newsletters, you no doubt have your own list of accounts or immediate contacts that you communicate with through email blasts or newsletters or personal outreach. So including links to your catalogs or to your custom collections that you've created for that target audience, or titles in your own materials, in your own emails, in your own social media, things that drive traffic back to your listing, the more the better, right? You can also use the share feature in Edelweiss to send a link to your review copies, directly from Edelweiss, and it will kind of function that way for you. Social media is super powerful, as you know. I mean, I'm sure you're all doing it and on different platforms. I found bookish Twitter is a super powerful thing. There's lots of book lovers on Twitter in particular. If you have a review copy in Edelweiss, share a pretty image of it on Twitter with a link directly to the title in Edelweiss for folks to request it or to download it directly. You could do the same for new catalogs and collections. That way you can expand your reach, you can draw more attention to it, you can keep people aware of new things that you're doing. And again, I'll mention again, if you tag Vice Squad exclusively, I'll also retweet it for you just to kind of give an extra boost there. You could see a couple examples. Norton does a good job of when they want to highlight a certain title, they'll put that out there where they'll have the jacket cover and the link to it in Edelweiss, or a certain collection. It's just some examples there. Okay, woo, that was a lot. I hoped it sparked some ideas for you and probably some questions, maybe some questions. If you're wondering more about how to do anything, or if there's something that's on your mind that we didn't talk about, feel free to email support@AboveTheTreeline again, or me at Sarah@AboveTheTreeline. If you want more detail on any of the promotional tactics we talked about, you can go to this URL, or also I have some handouts actually in the webinar right now. You can download them directly from there. So thanks for your time. Definitely please keep us posted on how we can help you better market your titles. Thanks.